Welcome to the Shy of Six podcast. We're getting ready to lose most of our audience after this episode because today we're going to be talking about DemoCraps and ReThuglicans. But mostly Democrats because this Tuesday, we saw 6 politicians at various states of decay take to the stage to talk policy differences and indulge in backroom gossip, evidently. Joining the show today, we have fellow political junkie Drew Marnick and TikTok star Tyler Wilson. Y'all want to say hello?
Yeah, how's it going? Appreciate you having me on the show. It's fun. It'll be fun.
Yeah, you'll be on next week, too.
Yeah, we'll be on next week. Yeah, talk about TikTok and what exactly it's about and all the trends that go on it.
And, of course, Drew's going to be a fellow content creator, too. He's going to be creating his own podcast very soon. You want to plug that real quick, just the name?
We do not have a name.
You don't have the name. Okay. Well, I mean, we'll get back to you on that one for sure. But I really wanted to take a look at this absolute train wreck that we had in terms of politics because the debate especially, it was very messy and I loved every second of it.
Worst one yet.
Yeah, the worst one by far. But I thought it would also be beneficial to have differences in our political perspective. So we have Tyler Wilson, who describes himself as what?
I'm like a centralist Republican. So I'm not far right, but I'm just in the middle, and I mostly agree with some of the things on the right. But I have a little bit of things on the left I also agree with as well.
All right. And then Drew Marnick, he's
moderate left.
Moderate left.
Yes. Very socially liberal.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to economics, definitely more moderate.
All right, and Brody, you want to talk at all, or are you good over there?
I don't know if it'll pick me up.
Oh, then okay. Well, it's fine. I'll talk then. I'm coming from a sort of the Bernie Sanders wing of the party, so socially liberal, but a little bit more government involvement in how we regulate our economy. So we have a lot of variation in our politics here, and I think that'll lead to a very interesting discussion on how this debate went.
At the cost of our friendship.
Yes.
Yes. Well, let's not get too heated, You don't want to get.
We don't
want to get too
angry
at each other.
We don't want to. Well, I know we got the pop filters, but we don't want to do any peeking on the mic. So, for the sake of the podcast, we want to keep it down a little bit.
I'm a straight anarchist, bro.
Yeah. That's Brody. He's an anarchist. So let's talk about the debate. Let's get into the thick of it.
Yeah.
So what was the narrative going into this debate, Drew? What were the big strands that everybody was picking up on? What were the problems?
All right. Well, see, I am an Andrew Yang supporter.
Of course, yeah.
No Yang.
No Yang.
First debate, no Yang.
A disgrace to the Yang gang.
Very unfortunate. So close.
Yeah, well, I don't even know if you could say close.
Well,
I mean, he obviously got stiffed by the polling requirements.
It was over 15 polls that were above the threshold that the DNC did not count as qualifying.
Yes. The DNC, the reason that they didn't pick up those polls is because they have to sponsor these polls. And because they didn't sponsor the polls and the lead up to the holidays, he didn't get the polling requirements.
Well, they have the set sponsors that count as the qualifying ones. The DNC themselves does not commission or sponsor polls because they can't appear biased.
Yeah.
So the way that it works is that they have these sponsors that count as qualifying for their debates. They go out and commission the polls, and those are the qualifying polls. The problem with that is that there are a lot of sometimes polls that are better rated, like Emerson, which is a A-, I believe, where Yang has done pretty well.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing about the Emerson polling is it favors more online candidates, right? So most of that polling is conducted on a younger demographic, right? So you get more support with respect to Bernie Sanders, Tulsi Gabbard, Andrew Yang especially.
Well, not completely, because, I mean, it is weighted towards using more landline because the older demographic is usually who votes.
Yeah.
But the problem with using solely landline polls nowadays is that
nobody uses a landline.
Exactly.
Nobody uses a landline.
Exactly.
So
that's why they're becoming less and less accurate.
We have that narrative entering the debate. Like, where's Yang? Where's the Yang gang? But
And
Tyler, as somebody that was sort of on the outside looking in, as somebody that didn't realize they were going to watch the debate until I came to you on Monday and was like, Tyler, I need you to watch the debate.
Yeah, I watched the debate, and I mean, I don't know too many about the Democratic politics because, I know, like, the main ones. I know, like, Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren knows, but there was the girl on the far right. I don't know her name. She was in, like, Red or something. I forget.
And we'll get to talking. We'll do like a breakdown of the candidates before we.
Yeah. But I honestly would have rather listened to Yang than her because, like, she bothered me by the way that she just talked. Like, she ran over her time every single time, and, like, everything she talked about just seemed very scattered. It just seemed very unprofessional the way that she talked, and I don't know. I wouldn't appreciate it.
That's part of the Midwestern appeal. Like, being incoherent. That's why Joe Biden's so popular in the Midwest, right?
I guess I don't know, but I would like because I took a test to see like what candidate I'd go for, and I took it like multiple times just to see, and one of them was Yang. I actually did get Yang for him, and so I was kind of when I heard about the debate, I was like, oh sweet, maybe I get to see him on there, and he wasn't on there, and I was like, well, that's a little disappointing, and then I don't know, it was kind of just weird.
Yeah,
I think that was. From at least what I saw on the internet, that seemed to be the opinion of a lot of people. Even if they weren't fans of Andrew Yang, they missed his voice up on stage.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, speaking of people that were on the stage, as much as we love Andrew Yang, on Tuesday he was not on the stage. But we did have 6 candidates, again, at various stages of decay. Do we want to talk about Joe Biden first?
Let's start from the bottom.
That's a good point, actually.
Amy Klobuchar.
No, I think Steyer is at the bottom.
He was until those 2 South Carolina.
That is true. He's polling at 15, courtesy of I forget the
15%.
15%.
Fox News.
Fox News. That is a promising poll for Steyer. So I suppose we could talk about Amy Klobuchar.
12% in I can't remember which state, but another Fox News poll.
Tyler, the candidate that you hated so much, that was on the right side, that you thought was annoying, kind of crazy.
Yes.
That was a politician called Amy Klobuchar,
Got it.
Midwestern, sort of from Minnesota. She reps a sort of conservative Democrat ideology. She's kind of, as moderate as it gets when it comes to Democratic politicians. Yeah. Anything else to add there?
She's a Republican.
That is true, but who else was a Republican? Liz Warren. That's true, and we'll get to that in a second. Next up, we have Steyer, of course, the billionaire who has been flooding the airwaves for the last few months. How does that ad go? I'm going to expose Donald Trump for what he is, a fraud and a failure.
I will make climate change my number one priority. He said that three times on the debate stage.
Well, he's trying to get the left lane in a way that doesn't necessarily conflict with his interests as a billionaire. So when you talk about green regulations, Tom Steyer is a hedge fund guy. All his money was made through market speculation. So he's not necessarily opposed to environmental regulations. He's not really on the productive side of the economy. So that's why he's more open to the idea of, let's do the environmental stuff.
Yeah. I think the best thing about Tom Steyer is that he debates like he's filming a commercial.
Yes.
He was looking at
the camera.
I remember this
time.
one specific moment. He was looking at the moderators like every other candidate does when he talks.
Mm-hmm.
Realized he wasn't looking at the camera, turned himself about 90 degrees to face the camera mid-sentence.
Hey, eye contact's important, right?
That's what they tell me in speech and debate. So I don't know if we have anything else to say about Steyer. It looks like his face is about to fall off, but
kind of does. Kind of a little slopey.
Next up, pulling up the rear at number 4 is Mayor Pete Buttigieg. He's the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, and corporate ghoul. So what do we have to say about Pete
Now,
Buttigieg?
for those wondering why we didn't place him higher, he is only doing well in Iowa.
Yeah. I mean,
2% in South Carolina.
A lot of that comes from his lack of black support. The overwhelming majority of the South Carolinian Democratic electorate, it's like 60% black.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you look at it and they see this white, like literally Casper the Ghost, and they're like, we can't support this guy. This guy.
Honestly, it was ever since that Root article came out. Pete Buttigieg is a lying motherfucker.
Yeah, I mean, Pete hasn't been getting a lot of favorable press from the black media, but this guy represents an ideology that wants very little change. He's in favor of public option. I'm struggling to come up with policies that are actually important to the discourse on the Democratic left. What is he in favor of?
Well, I think one unique thing that I haven't heard other candidates that do support a public option say is that one of his main points is that you're automatically enrolled.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to get fired from your job and lose your private insurance, you'd be automatically lifted up onto that public option.
Yeah, okay. I had something on Pete Buttigieg, but I just forgot.
He does propose more higher education reform than some of the other moderate
I think the
candidates
one
as well.
thing that I really thought was interesting about Pete Buttigieg's candidacy, at current we have 9 Supreme Court justices, right?
Yeah.
Pete Buttigieg was suggesting, at least towards the beginning of his campaign, that he wanted to expand the judiciary to 12 justices. And his reasoning was because the Republicans have appointed very young, very conservative justices, and he wants to solve that problem by creating more justice. I don't know. I'd have to look more into it, but that strikes me as interesting. What do you think about that, Tyler?
I mean, even though like I'm mainly Republican, I don't really think that's the best idea. Because I mean, if you think about it, it's kind of just like him saying like, "Oh, I didn't get my way. Let me add more, so then I can get my way."
Yeah.
In a way, like in a sense, that's what he's saying.
No, I definitely.
And
see
so even though that they're young, that doesn't mean that they can't change. Like you just said, Elizabeth Warren, she was Republican, she switched to Democrat. That does not mean that somebody's exactly, yeah. And so I mean, with them being young, I mean that kind of it gives them the leverage of what path they want to choose. Do they want to go Democratic? Do they want to go Republican? They might be Republican right now in this moment, but we all know that society changes over time. So they will eventually change. I mean, their mindsets will change. It's adding more won't help anything because that'll also get more voices and things will be harder to pass than what they are now.
What I think is really interesting is I have a friend that's really passionate about court reform, and he thinks we need to have term limits.
Term limits.
Court
I
justices.
think that's a good idea, actually. So the argument that all these government scholars would say, well, I mean, if we create term limits for the judiciary, that inherently makes the court political.
Like it isn't already.
Yeah, exactly. The whole process of how we appoint justices is inherently political. It's whoever has the majority gets their guy in, and it's not great. So we've sort of veered off the track. We're talking more about the judiciary than Pete Buttigieg at that point. I think that sort of indicates I don't like talking about Pete Buttigieg. He's kind of a boring guy.
When he was up there talking, it seemed like everything he was saying was like to please the people. It didn't seem like anything what he was saying actually wanted to benefit him.
He strikes me as somebody that is going to say anything to get
elected. A yes guy. He seems like a yes guy.
Like, a controversial opinion, I actually kind of like the guy.
Well, I
know plenty of people that support Pete Buttigieg. I know somebody that's actually planning on volunteering. Caitlin Ryan, I'm talking to you. Please don't do it, Mayor Poop. But it's not that his supporters don't exist. It's just that as somebody that's supporting something left of the Overton window, left of how our discourse normally is, he's not a very exciting candidate for me.
Which is one of the things about Iowa. Like, it's a caucus, not a primary.
Yeah.
So the way to win Iowa is having that most excitable support base.
Mm-hmm. And it's all about turnout in Iowa. Yeah.
Exactly. And while Pete Buttigieg has a lot of support that we can see in the polls in Iowa, I haven't seen them as the most excitable support base at all. Mm-hmm. It seems very non-rigid.
Yeah, so we've been talking about Pete Buttigieg for a while. Next up in the polls that we're going to talk about is the woman of the night, somebody that aroused a lot of controversy. We're going to be talking about Liz Warren. This is a senator from Massachusetts who is supposedly part of the more progressive lane of the Democratic Party. and also formerly part of the Cherokee tribe. I don't know if you guys knew.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting.
what do you guys think about Liz Warren?
Well, I noticed that she was one of the more stronger, I guess, women's up there. I guess there's only two, but like, and I didn't really like the other one, so I guess it's by process of elimination.
Certainly better than.
But she
Klobuchar.
seemed like she had an understanding of what to do. She seemed like she knew the process. She knew how to get things done. And like, I forget about some of the standpoints that she stood on, but I remember that she was like very strongly on like I think like two main big ones, but I forget what the two were. Man, I wish I could remember. I don't know. Do you remember what her two standpoints were? She had two really good ones that she brought up. I know that she talked about the one with like Bernie or
yeah, there was the whole
about the men. About
yes,
all the men lost
yes.
except the woman up there, and how she was the most electable.
electable.
Yeah, electable.
Yeah.
Leading to one of the most awkward moments of the debate.
Oh my God,
the
that was
30
basic maths.
years.
Did you see the tweet by Andrew Yang later?
Yes.
Like he's like,
Yeah.
well, actually, if you do the math, it's actually 29 years and 2 months. And then I saw the replies and just like typical men supporting men. This is facilitating sexism in America. Just
Well,
no,
I
not
mean, as
really.
like for you as a Bernie, like I'm a supporter. It must. Any girl could throw anything out at a guy like that, and I'm like, you can say no all day long, but you know, and I to me, in my opinion, I feel like that was kind of a lie to be thrown at him. So then she could give a statement like that. So then she could go out and say,
yeah, I'm not gonna speculate
like
too
that,
much
but-
on who's telling the truth, who's lying. If I'm being honest, I think that Bernie Sanders might have said something to the effect of what Hillary supporters have been saying all along.
Yeah.
Hillary wasn't elected because it's harder for a woman to get elected president, right? There's sort of an undercurrent of sexism, and they've been saying this all along. So I'm thinking Bernie might have said something to that effect. Like
he could have, yeah.
so, just look at 2016. It could happen to you, Warren. Blah blah blah, and then Warren takes that the wrong way. She says, well, "Bernie said I can't be president." So that there could have been a little bit of misinterpretation, but I tend to skew on the favor of Sanders. I might be a little bit biased. When I say that he's well intentioned. I think that the fact that he supported Warren in 2015, you guys know, indicates the fact that he does think that a woman could be president. The fact that he campaigned so vigorously for Hillary Clinton also suggests that yes, he thought that a woman could be president. So that was sort of the story of the night with Elizabeth Warren. Well, do we have anything else to say about Liz Warren?
I think it was clearly a miscommunication between the two.
Do you think? I actually we'll have a whole segment on this because that was sort of the moment of the night. That was sort of the thing. They talked about Iran. They talked about health care.
Yes.
This was the moment that defined the night. It was Warren and it was Sanders on that stage.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. But my thoughts on Elizabeth Warren in general, though, she used to be my number one, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, I support Andrew Yang now, but that one of the reasons I do is because I'm a numbers guy.
Yeah.
I follow the data, and her being
I've got a plan
working
for that.
as like a data researcher, that really had me lean towards.
And in the weeks to come, as the Democratic primary in the South Carolina approaches, I'll be trying to convince all my Warren friends to hop over on the Bernie train, and we'll see how that goes. But speaking of Bernie Sanders, this is the guy that's coming up next in national polling. You could argue, well, he's doing better in Iowa and New Hampshire, maybe Nevada, but national polling, Bernie's next.
Yes.
Now, this guy is repping the furthest left ideology of the Democratic Party right now. He's holding up the mantle of somebody that's going to support Medicare for all, college for all, a policy that is a Green New Deal, obviously.
Canceling student debt.
So this is somebody that I think that Tyler, as maybe a fiscal conservative, would be most opposed to.
I would be, yes.
So you're probably the typical voter in South Carolina. You know, you're conservative, and you're white. So yeah. So how could you describe to me what your thought process on Bernie Sanders is?
So like for instance, you guys just said the education thing, and he wants free education for all, wants to get rid of the debt and all that kind of stuff. Well, mainly all that money that
when you were talking about the free college for all, the problem I have with that is instead of the government just paying for everybody's tuition like that, why not directly attack the costs of college? Like, one of the things that's driving tuition prices up so much is administrative costs. The administrator to student ratio in the 1960s, when college used to be a lot cheaper, the administration to student ratio was more in like 1 to 50.
And to your point,
I like that idea. That's a good idea.
And to your point, you can walk and you can chew gum. So there's nothing saying that we can't bring down the prices of administration, which have admittedly gotten way too high. When I was walking through Furman, beautiful brick roads, but then I was walking through the campus and I was like, people are really paying $50,000 a year to go to this college. So obviously there needs to be something done about administration costs, but you look at the pros of expanding access to education, you see an increase in production across the United States. So did you know that we rank 21st on that PISA index?
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes from the fact that we're not giving students the college education that they need. We're creating a paywall that's essentially created a class of haves and have-nots in America.
Yeah, and it's not like I'm against like lowering the money of college. Like, by all means, like if it's 50,000, drop it down to like 10,000. But like making it like zero and like free.
I mean, is it really fair that we pay, or that the CFOs of colleges can get paid in like the $200,000-$300,000 range, while the professors are making $80,000 to $90,000? And in my opinion, that's not fair. And that administration cost is what's so high that's making the tuition up.
And of course,
so
you look at corporate boards, and I know this is beside the point. There's an even greater disparity between the average worker and the CEO. It's estimated that the average worker of Amazon is getting paid 300 times less than Mr. Bezos. So,
well, the thing I was talking about is that's actually the CFO of the college itself that's being paid that much. So that their salary is coming from that tuition payment. And I think another problem with paying for college for all is that right now we have a severe problem of underemployment. So there are lots of people with college degrees that spent tons of money on it that aren't actually working jobs that require college degrees. We need to have a lot more support for vocational jobs. There's not enough support for trade schools, because these are like actual high-paying jobs that are going to remain for a long time. Things like plumbing, welding, even things like programming, which could require a college degree, but in a lot of cases doesn't.
And right now I can start hearing the Andrew Yang and Drew Meyernick.
Yeah.
But we're going to go on to Joe Biden now, the front runner nationally in the Democratic primary. This guy is really hilarious. We're going to have a segment at the end where we're going to talk about an interview he had with the New York Times. But I think that anybody that has even a passing acquaintance with politics knows about Joe Biden. Of course, he was Obama's VP in 2008 and 2012. Tyler, as somebody that has known about Joe Biden, what is your opinion on Biden?
In my opinion, he's kind of like a loose cannon. You never know what he's going to say next. I mean...
I really appreciate that. I really appreciate a politician that can, fire from the hip. But the thing about, Biden is he's firing from the hip, but he's got a squirt gun.
But he's doing friendly fire.
So he's just shooting little wet noodles at you while he's like... Well, back in my day, we went to the drive-in theater, and, the fat trucks would always block the screen, and I remember Karen. She was great. She had the beautiful
Saturday
hair.
Night Live is scary accurate when it comes to the impressions of him.
Yeah, I know.
It was the year 1920. Who's a what's it?
Yeah. So besides that, you have a milquetoast Democrat that represents essentially what Obama did in 2012 by the time that he had sort of watered down his policy to something that is more reflective of the establishment, the Democratic establishment. And I actually don't have much else to say about Biden. I think he's terrible on policy, but that's really all I got to say.
I think the only reason he has such a large base is because he was...
It's name ID.
It's Vice President Barack
100%.
Obama. Yeah.
And there's a segment of the media that think that's also Bernie Sanders. I think that's a high probability. You look at Iowa, 4 in 10 people haven't even made up their minds on who they're going to vote for, and I find that infuriating. As somebody that lives and breathes politics, you're talking about an Iowa electorate that isn't even sure who they're going to vote for.
You're also talking about a very unique situation where we have no clear front runner, and you have these 6-7 candidates that you have to decide between. It's a hard decision, and personally, I'm glad that they're taking it seriously by not choosing so early.
So I mean, we could talk about the Warren v. Bernie allegations now, but I think that we've sort of made a great segue into our the Iowa caucuses.
Yeah.
So, Tyler, I asked you to do a little bit of research, a little bit of inquiry into the Iowa caucus. What are you armed with? What intelligence are you armed with right now?
I mean, knowing that that's going to be like the kickoff to see who really is in the lead right now, like who really is.
Of course, that set the Iowa caucus defines the tone for the rest of the primary.
Yeah, and I mean, with some of these people, like we were talking about Pete Buttigieg, we don't like really. Oh, I guess you said you didn't really mind him all that much, but we don't know anything about him. But like, he might actually pull out in these polls that we didn't know about, and maybe that we would get to see that Joe Biden, maybe he's not on the top that everybody says. Maybe he's actually like third or fourth, and so I'm kind of interested to see how exactly that's going to play out. Like, I'm really interested to see like how the polls are going to be after everything.
So something historically that you've seen, I've seen through the electoral process is if you win Iowa, you win New Hampshire, you're starting to snowball, right? This is the same thing that happened in 2016 when you talk about the Republican primary. So Donald Trump narrowly loses Iowa.
Yeah.
Then he picks up New Hampshire. Then he picks up Nevada. Then he picks up South Carolina. At that point, he's unstoppable.
Yeah.
Because I think for the average vote can beat Donald Trump in 2020. So I think that Tom Steyer, fraud and a failure.
Andrew Yang.
I will go against Donald Trump. So, I'm not afraid.
What I'm saying is, if somebody comes out and they win Iowa, they win New Hampshire, I think with about 60% certainty, unless it's Pete Buttigieg is sort of a weird exception, that they could potentially snowball the rest of the process.
They could, yeah.
They could.
Yeah, the problem with Pete Buttigieg doing that is that he doesn't have the African American support.
He just doesn't. He doesn't. So looking at the race again, there's another factor that has seldom been considered by the average voter is some of the people that are running are actually senators. And this intersects with another thing that's going on in D.C. that nobody else cares about except the people in D.C., and the impeachment trial.
Yeah.
So one of the obligations of a senator is to sit on an impeachment trial and hear out the proceedings. This is something that could drag on for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it's keeping Senator Warren, Senator Sanders, and Senator Klobuchar away from the campaign trail. So if they're away, what impact is that going to have as we go into this process?
I mean, another obligation is that the senators are supposed to be unbiased, but we don't see Lindsey Graham doing that, do we?
Yeah, and I mean, it's a shit show. It's a shit show, this whole impeachment thing. The only people that care about this are boomers. I have yet to have met anybody that's under 40 that actually gives a shit about the impeachment trials. I'm sorry, like, Drew's giving the side eye. Do you care about the impeachment trials?
I mean, I don't care, but...
Well, I care, because, I mean, it is a big moment in our history. The only reason I don't care much is nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, it's hard to maintain
it's more frustrating than anything.
It's hard to maintain any level of engagement when we already know the outcome of the process. No matter what we bring to the table as Democrats, the Republicans will shoot it down. I mean, it could come out that Trump shot somebody on Fifth Avenue, as he said in 2016, but Mitch McConnell and his coalition of Republicans would probably still rally around Donald Trump.
Which was surprising when, in court, his lawyers made that argument. When the judge asked, if Trump were to shoot someone on Fifth Avenue, you would expect him to not be convicted. And they responded, yes.
See, I didn't read into that conversation. But Republicans sorry, are kind of vile in how they conduct politics on Washington. In Washington. ReThuglicans. But I think a large segment of Republicans, I'm thinking more of like Tyler Wilson, more moderate Republicans, they look at the process and they're just...
Well,
I don't know. What do you think?
From
what
a
have
Republican standpoint,
what have you made of the Trump administration over the last 3 years?
Mm-hmm.
Am I a Trump supporter? No. I'm not a big fan of loose cannon kind of people. Like, he can go out there and he can say some things, but then there's sometimes he does say things that are like, oh yeah, that makes sense, you know? And it is a little annoying, like, every week that I see that, Democrats shot this at Trump. Oh, Democrats shot this at Trump. And it's like every other week you guys got something else that you're pushing on Trump. These things, maybe he doesn't. But you guys have said so many things towards him that, like, you know, that, like, it makes you lose track of, like, what was originally there.
One thing that establishment Democrats have done is they've drowned out all the coherent arguments against the Trump administration.
Yeah.
So you look at this, it's turned into a soap opera.
It really has.
You have to follow from episode 1. You have to go all the way back to when Trump was running for president. And you have all these names, all these Russian names that you can't even pronounce. Yanovovich or whatever. Like, all these names, all these witnesses that they want to call in.
And, like, as a Democrat, like, I don't really see, like, a problem. Like, please correct me if I'm wrong, but, like, I don't see, like, a problem. Like, I don't know what he's doing that's, like, causing such a problem with, like, the Russians, but, like... are we trying to, like, make friends with, like, Russians? Like, I think why wouldn't we want to, like, become friends with them?
So the accusation
like an ally
that
with
was
them?
levied against Donald Trump is quid pro quo, which is essentially, you do this thing for me, I'll do you a political favor. It's a form of corruption.
Yeah, with, like, the election process. They said, like, Russian rigged it or something?
Well, it's not necessarily the election process. It specifically has to do with the investigation of Joe Biden. So Joe Biden has a son named Hunter Biden, who is also a crack addict. I don't know if you guys knew this, by the way. He's, like, super into crack, absolute fail son, like myself.
I mean, his dad ain't the smartest person.
And he appointed Hunter, or he sought he wanted the Ukrainians to appoint him to the head of this energy board, right?
And Trump called to see if he can get any beef on him or something like that, right?
And then they found the beef. And then the Democrats are like, well, we got to cover our ass, but he did something illegal, so we can impeach him. And I think that the Democrats could have done something where they could have gotten him on so much more. So, specifically, I'm talking about, like, the foreign policy blunders in Yemen, how we traded arms with Saudi Arabia, who in turn used that to exact genocide upon the Houthi Yemenis. And that's more abstract, but I feel like that's something that the American public can understand better than this soap opera, right? They see all these names. When you talk about genocide, you're seeing thousands of people die, blah, blah, blah. And again, we're sort of getting sidetracked. We're talking a little bit about impeachment, but... I think that this whole impeachment process has been marred by really, really petty shit.
Well, that's what I feel like. It's just stacking up on top of things. Like you said, the son was doing something, and they caught him doing something. But then the Democrats didn't want them to get caught, so then they alleged impeachment towards him because he did something illegal. And I guarantee you the Republicans would probably shoot back with, like, oh, well, I caught you guys doing this. And I feel like it's just a lot of, oh, I caught you doing this, I caught you doing that, da-da-da. And it's just going to keep on adding on of them catching each other, just doing stuff they're not supposed to be. Because... I mean, I'm pretty sure in the government, people probably do things all the time that are probably illegal, but swept underneath the rug, and they just don't see it. And everybody's catching each other now. They're like, oh, you did it, you do it. And it's just a bunch of pointing fingers. And I think that's just kind of like where this whole impeachment thing is just not... That's why people don't care about it. It's because everybody just keeps on pointing fingers at each other. It's like, oh, there they go. They're pointing at them again.
Well, the thing is, just because one side does it, does that mean we should let the other side go when it's apparent that they did?
Exactly, yeah.
I guarantee you if Mitch McConnell was given the opportunity to do this to Obama, he would have done it to Obama.
I'm glad that I prepared for this impeachment talk by watching the debate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on the debate, it was actually surprisingly short. Like, they brought up impeachment, and I, like, audibly groaned. I heard,
I was being sarcastic.
Impeachment. But they had, like, 5 minutes where they talked about impeachment. Because here's the thing, all the Democrats agree on impeachment. Well, the ones on the stage, at least, agree about impeachment.
Yeah.
This is what annoyed me about the entire first hour of the debate, if I'm being honest. I didn't see much difference between them. And the reason I watch the debates is to see who I'm going to vote for.
Mm-hmm.
And when I see that they're all agreeing on these topics over and over and over again, like CNN literally asked them, would you overturn this thing Trump did? And they all said yes. And of course they were all going to say yes.
See, no, I disagree with that a point. Because it's 5 people saying the same thing and one person that is going the opposite direction every single time. When you look at the stage, all these people are in support of one thing, but Bernie Sanders is going the opposite direction. So you talk about the trade deal. Bernie was against that because it didn't include a statute to climate change. You talk about health care. Bernie wants single payer. Just left person on the stage and then everybody else.
And I kind of agree with Drew here. When I was watching it, I just kind of felt like it was like a party or something up there to him. Like they were, well, I guess you guys are in a party, but like I don't know, because like they were just up there and it's like, oh, my good friend, man, I agree with you, and they're over there like making cracking jokes at each other the whole time, and like I don't know, it just felt like they weren't like, okay, I came to see a debate. I didn't like come to see you guys like, oh yeah, I agree with my buddy to the side.
Like my favorite
here.
part of the debate
And
was that middle 20 minutes when they talked about healthcare, because they are all very different on their plans.
Yeah, I
for
noticed
healthcare.
that. Yeah, they each have their own like different way of they're gonna address it. And I kind of like that a little bit. But.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, but you say that they're all amicable.
Yeah.
But one thing that got really ugly during this night that we've been sort of loosely talking about but not actually getting into the meat is the Warren versus Bernie thing.
You
This
called me a
was
liar on national TV.
That was the hottest moment, and CNN held this. They held this over for 2 news cycles. Actually 3. It was
I think it was
published.
2.
The timeline. Stories published January 13th. Debate January 14th. They asked him the question. January 15th, they released the audio. So for 3 news cycles, CNN was trying to, I'm not going to say denigrate the Bernie campaign, but I think there's strong evidence to suggest that CNN is very anti-Bernie. Is that that's a fair thing to say?
Well, I mean, CNN
I'm going to
I
read
don't
you.
see that much.
I'm going to read you some of these questions. I like these questions that CNN asks.
Well, when you're on the debate stage and you get asked, and whenever they come at you with, oh, you don't want a girl to become the president, yeah, probably a lot of questions are going to be pushed towards you. But I mean, I'm not saying that like I'm not saying that they're being rough on him. I'm just saying that when you get accused of something like that, I feel like you're going to get asked a lot of questions.
Look at the framing of the question with respect to the woman getting elected.
Yeah, third questions.
Quote: Senator Warren confirmed in a statement that in 2018 you told her that you did not believe that a woman could win the election. Why did you say that? The framing of the question, of course, being, you did say that. Why did you say that, you sexist pig? Another one. This one has more to do with his Medicare for All policy. Senator Sanders, your campaign proposals would double federal spending over the next decade, an unprecedented level of spending that has not been seen since World War II. How would you keep your plans from bankrupting the country? So when all the other Democrats talk about their Medicare plans, they don't get anything about, well, public option. How are you going to pay for that? How are you going to expand Obamacare? How are you going to pay for the wars? There's sort of a false equivalency that's made between the Medicare for All proposal and literally everything else.
I'll give you that on the Medicare for All question. Like, that's definitely a very poor way of framing the question.
And you
but
look at who's sponsoring CNN. They're running all these ads for these companies that are selling medication. They have a private interest in maintaining their advertisers. So there's clearly an incentive structure for challenging whatever Bernie Sanders is proposing.
I mean,
so I'm not saying it's all connected. I'm not going to go.
Yeah, I don't want to get too
tinfoil hat
here.
I don't want to put the tinfoil hat on, but I think that the connection is there, and CNN has a definite reason or a definite incentive structure which would incentivize them to ask things from a right-wing perspective.
Yeah, I mean, now that you mention it, I do remember watching the debate, and there was one time where that one of the question people, I think it was like that one girl, not the African American, but the other girl. She had like red lipstick on. I can't say.
Oh, she was so.
She seemed like
boring.
a bitch. Like
not a bitch necessarily, but
like,
very very boring.
I don't know. She just seemed like a Karen, like she could just go off on you any minute. But like I remember she asked. I know.
Recurring character.
I feel like she could have she asked a question to Bernie, and I remember it was so long that he was sitting there going like this, trying to listen because she was saying so much stuff to him on this question, and I was like, wow, I was like, that's a little far fetched. Like, and then you'd go like the booty gag, and be like, would you take the soldier out of Iran? And it would be like, and it was like a short little question like that, and I was like, what? Like, how can you do that to somebody? I don't know. I just remember that whenever you mentioned it, that she gave him like this whole paragraph of a question, and then asked him a sentence.
She asks him the question. So again, to clarify, Mr. Sanders, did you or did you not say that a woman could never be president? And he says, no, I did not.
Yes.
Then she says, Senator Warren, how did you feel when Bernie Sanders said that?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I actually think that is kind of a fair question because she very clearly thought he said that. And I think it is important that we hear her opinion on what...
If you just go about and just assume that something is incorrect, incoherent, and again, I'm of the opinion that maybe there was some misinterpretation. Maybe Bernie did say something to the effect of, well, look at 2016, Hillary lost the election. But I think that you do have to come at it from a perspective of maintaining your integrity as an outlet.
Yeah.
Bias in any question that's asked on one side. So, I feel like that question is kind of biased because it just frames it as, did you say this? He says no, and then the question immediately after that is, he said this, what do you think about it?
Yeah, she could have at least asked it better. She could have been like, well, considering if this is true or not, Elizabeth Warren, how did this make you feel? Or something like on the lines of even if this,
true,
if it was true, she could have said
true.
if this was true, how did it make you feel? And I feel like that could have went a lot easier and a lot smoother because it did kind of sound like they were attacking Bernie just a little bit.
All right.
Well, what I think the problem might have been with that one is that, they prepare these questions, right?
Oh, that is
so
true.
that could be a prepared question, and then she just wasn't thinking about what he had just said and immediately said the question, but that would be a problem in its own right.
Yeah.
So, of course, this was a spicy moment on stage, but the stuff that came after it was almost even better. So
Tom Steyer,
after
my man.
I love him. So for context, after the debate, all the candidates got up and they started shaking each other's hands. But when Bernie Sanders went to Elizabeth Warren, extended his hand, Warren retracted her hand.
You
and
called
started
me a liar on national TV.
So CNN held on to the audio, but the next day they published the following transcript. Well, we say transcript, but the microphones clearly picked it up. Warren, I think you called me a liar on national TV. Sanders says, what? I think you called me a liar on national TV. Let's not do this right now. If you want to have that discussion, we'll have that discussion, Sanders said. And then Warren replied, anytime. Sanders says, you called me a liar. You told me, and then he cuts himself off. All right, let's not do this right now. Now, this is the best part. After their exchange, fellow Democratic candidate Tom Steyer...
I don't want to get in the middle of this. I just want to say hi, Bernie.
Okay, Steyer is America's sweetheart. We love him. We love him so much.
We see him everywhere. How can you
see
not
him everywhere?
love him?
It's... Okay, so what exactly do we make of this? Because I think Warren knew that she was on the hot mic. She's been in politics too long to not know that she was wired the entire time. Now, I've heard a whole bunch of pundits that say, well, she was just really angry, she was infuriated, she just wanted to go and talk to Bernie right then in that moment. But I can't help but feel that she knew that conversation was going to be picked up by the media.
So was it picked up from the mics that are on the stands, or are they actually...
They have mics on their ties and stuff.
What CNN said is they had turned off the primary mics, which I don't necessarily believe, but they had to get the audio from backup mics.
How could they have... if you think that they didn't
So,
turn it
like,
off, how could they have
20
possibly known that Elizabeth Warren is going to go right to Sanders and say, you call me a liar on national
Well,
TV? I think you're thinking a little too
in the span of 20 to 30 seconds, do we really believe that CNN turned off the primary microphones?
And what I'm saying is the media, you can believe it or not, the media has a lot of leadway into who is doing what. You know, like they can say like, oh man, this person is doing bad, and everybody would jump on that train saying, oh yeah, this person's doing bad. The media controls a lot, so you're not telling me that like, oh, we're gonna get this juicy gossip at the end of this thing, so let's leave the mics on, because you know after that they think the mics are off, so they can say whatever they want. But the media, they're like, oh man, we can get some good stuff on right now if we keep the mics on. So they kept the mics on, and what did they get? They got the good stuff.
And I think that's also carried by the next day to publish this audio that they definitely could have accessed at any point.
Yeah.
Guys, they're technical experts. They're better than Brody on this stuff. It's not that hard to go back and listen to the audio. But I don't know. Think what you want about this. I think that CNN was acting nefariously. Maybe Drew thinks I'm putting on the tinfoil cap. But that was the spicy thing that happened with respect to the debate. So we talked about the debate. We talked about the Iowa caucus. And I think that we just hit just about everything.
One thing I do want to talk about in the debate is healthcare.
Okay.
So I think it was fair when they asked Bernie about the payment. I don't think the way they framed the question is right at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd like to, as a Bernie supporter, I'd like you to go into his payment plan for that.
Okay. So one thing that Bernie Sanders has conceded since the beginning is that there would be a tax increase on income made over $29,000. He says that this tax increase would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 4%. And through this tax increase, which for the average family making $60,000 in America, that's going to cost $1,200 more in the taxes that they pay. So you look at all the other costs. American families at current are paying 20% of their income on health care. For a family that is making $60,000 a year, that's $12,000 a year. So I think the argument that the Sanders camp is trying to make is the net gain that you get from eliminating deductibles, premiums, copays outweighs the tax increase that you would see as a result of getting Medicare for all.
Do we have the numbers on whether or not that tax increase is going to be sufficient to pay for Medicare for all?
Well, I think that it's a combination of other policies, right? So Bernie's looking very strongly into shrinking the military rather than expanding it. He's doing a Wall Street speculation tax. There's means other than the 4% income tax increase on the middle class. That's going to get to that end.
Does he support the wealth tax as well? The net worth tax?
You know, I don't necessarily support the wealth tax, but I think that Bernie Sanders does.
Okay. That is one of my biggest gripes about him. I just think we need to be more realistic. Like looking at the European countries, a lot of them don't have a wealth tax, and that's a good reason. They used to, and they had to repeal it.
It's something that's been tried before, but I'm not necessarily in support of a wealth tax. But I'm in favor of the spirit of getting Medicare for all, because I think in the end that would be beneficial to the working class more so than tax increases. So that's Medicare. I wanted to get to something funny now, because we've been pretty serious this entire time, and I'm starting to feel it in my lower back. I'm getting very exhausted. But Joe Biden actually did an interview with the New York Times, because the New York Times have been running a series of interviews to determine who they're going to endorse this election cycle. So even though I don't think this endorsement is going to have too much of an effect on the process, the transcripts of these interviews have been the sole reason why I exist right now. Gold. Absolute gold. So, Jesus, I don't even know where to begin. I've got like 5 or 6 of these quotes.
And also, I've not read any of this, so everything out of me is about to be
our
exact.
Reactions. Me and Tyler here. Gonna be completely genuine.
Yeah, because I have not heard anything behind this. I'm interested and I'm ready to go. It's gonna sound fun.
So here's a question on how Joe Biden is going to convince younger voters that he's the person to move the party into the future. So he's answering the question, and then something unexpected happens. No. By the way, just my message isn't that I'm just going to return to the Obama era. My message is twofold. Number one, the next president of the United States, I think that you all have to admit he's going to have to be able to do two things. And then at that point, a phone rings. He's like, what the hell is that? And then the guy, the interviewer's like, Mr. Vice President, you're getting a phone call. He's like, oh. So
young voter appeal.
Young
right
voter
there.
appeal. The question literally about young voter appeal. Now there was a story about how like Bernie Sanders doesn't have any apps on his phone. Joe Biden can't even recognize when a phone call is being sent his way. So who's more out of touch here? Who's more out of touch? Let's see what else we got. This is another good one. I'm not saying it's guaranteed that I win, but name me a nominee who's taken as many hits from the beginning of them announcing, even as I announced late, who's taken the hits. Y'all declare me, not you, editorially in this broad sense, declare me dead. And guess what? I ain't dead. I'm not gonna die. So there's...
You lost me about after 2 seconds of that.
Yeah, and that's what's great about the transcript. Is it's already incoherent. You can barely understand when he's like in the same room with you. But when you're like reading it back to people, they're like, "What the hell?"
It's like the I forget which president it was. It was like, "Fool me once, you can't fool me again."
You know
George W. Bush.
You know how Joe Biden comes up with what he's gonna say? He puts it into Google Translate, and then swaps it between English and Chinese multiple times,
several
then
times.
says what's back in English.
So he says, "Declare me dead," and guess what? I ain't dead. I'm not gonna die. And then there's like a silence that falls over the room, and then someone's like, Mr. President, can I follow up on?" And then somebody else interrupts him. Dude, everyone dies, and he's like, "I'm not gonna die politically." So I think the suggestion here is Joe Biden is an immortal lizard that's running for the highest office in the country. Guys, can we actually vote for Biden if he's
I
a
thought we
lizard?
already knew that.
Like, we knew that, but like, America.
We got
knows
confirmation.
that. We got confirmation. We know for facts now. Brody, how are we doing on time?
57:45.
Yeah, well, okay. I've got one more from the reading series, and then we'll just wrap it up here. Corn dog. By the way, that's what some of these Bernie people don't get. You have to come to the center. It's like, I was eating a corn dog the other day. It was like a corn dog with some mustard. When you get to the middle, it's hard and tough and dry, but you have to eat that too. You have to eat that and finish it, but it's very hard. To which the interviewer replied, "Sir, are you talking about eating the wooden stick?" To which he replied, "What?"
So undoubtedly, like, the implication here is that you eat the stick.
Yeah.
You eat the stick.
Like,
You eat
Do
the
you
stick.
eat,
Senile
do you eat your
man.
corn dog with the stick or without
This
the
is
stick?
why Biden wins Iowa, because it's just like a crack infested just hellhole.
Do you think
That's
that
just
his
like, they
fans...
all eat the stick?
Do you
They
think
all
his
eat the stick.
fans just don't take into consideration like at all what he says, like stuff like this? Like they're like, "Oh, everybody makes mistakes. Like we all eat the stick sometimes. Like it's no big deal."
He's just
He's the guy that doesn't peel the banana before he eats it.
Come on, this man eating the banana sideways, like
he's really pandering to the crackhead vote here. He's really
Just like
earning
his son.
every single one of
I
those
like
votes.
the end response too. Is like he is floored by the reporter being like, "Are you implying
That you're going to eat the stick?"
And he's like, "What are you talking about?
you're not supposed to eat the stick.
There's
What?
a stick?
All right. So I think with that being said, we talked about the debate. We talked about the Iowa caucus, and we did our reading series. Do y'all have any closing thoughts? I mean, this is probably going to be our last political episode before the Iowa caucus. So, well, what do you guys make? Do you guys have any bold predictions for the Iowa
Bernie
caucus?
Sanders,
Bernie
100%.
Sanders, 100%.
Not a huge fan, but he's gonna win the Iowa caucus. He's got the polls behind him with the older that are heavily weighted towards the older vote.
Of course,
he's got
the voter
that
enthusiasm.
He's got the younger demographic right behind him. Most excitable and sticky fan base. He's got the Iowa. Caucus
What do you
in
think,
the
Tyler?
bag.
What's your prediction?
I'm also kind of feeling Bernie Sanders. I'm also kind of feeling Elizabeth Warren just because she's a woman. Like, not trying to be mean, but she's a woman, you know? And
Okay.
so that's going to kind of get that out there a little bit. And because, you know, she's standing pretty strong, like I said earlier. You know, Bernie Sanders is also up there as well. So I feel like them two are going to be kind of tied. If it's not going to be one in first, it'll be the other one as second. And, you know, they'll alternate. And I feel like Joe Biden will probably be third, if anything. But
Yeah, it's going to be Bernie first, Biden second, Buttigieg third, I actually think. And then I want to say Yang fourth, but
I'm
we'll
sorry.
see.
I
I'm
don't
sorry.
know.
I don't know if Yang's gonna crack 15.
Falls in this.
I don't know.
Not
if-
till I don't think we'll see him until Super Tuesday,
How about-
honestly.
Yeah.
Something like interesting. I was in my history class the other day, and we were talking about how much people were spending towards their
Oh, yeah.
campaigns. I don't know if you saw this.
Madden
but,
spent like $150
Yes.
million dollars.
Like-
it's
Like,
insane.
I actually haven't seen that many commercials because I know he's focusing his ad space somewhere else. But there's one commercial that he plays, and it basically he credits himself with rebuilding New York after 9/11.
After 9/11,
Like,
yeah, I've seen that ad.
Basically, like the commercial is just it just says, "Oh."
Did you hear that he?
I don't know what
Bloomberg
you're
is-
talking about. He basically single-handedly built the
Yeah,
World
did you
Trade
hear
Center.
that? Did you guys hear that Bloomberg made a $10 million ad buy for the Super Bowl?
I
Did
did.
he?
He made a $10 million Super
How much?
Bowl ad.
How long of an ad space is
It's
that?
a worth.
That's like 30 seconds.
I believe it's
Yeah.
30
30
seconds.
seconds.
It's worthless because that is the one demographic where you are going to get maybe 2 voters out of.
Yeah. Because
Republican dads, we love it. We love it.
yeah.
All right, so I think that's it, guys. It's really been a blast having you both of you on.
Yeah, thank you.
Tyler, I know you're gonna have I'm gonna have you next week.
Yeah, for sure. I'm
But
glad.
I really hope that the listeners at home are enjoying this better audio quality, and we'll be back with you next week as we talk about all things TikTok.
I will be glad to not be there.
Yep.